Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great break and now you're ready for our next panel discussion, the first panel discussion of this series. I'd like to introduce to you Torsten Kriening, which is publisher and CEO of SpaceWatch.Global. He will be the moderator of this discussion. If you are not following yet, I strongly advise you to sign up to the newsletter and to start following also the podcast of SpaceWatch.Global. Torsten, now it's your turn to moderate this discussion.
Okay, I can unmute now. Can I ask my panel just to say a word to check sound? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Torsten.
That's good. Okay. Okay, my panel is still muted, obviously. However, then I will just start and then we come to you later. Emmanuel, thank you very much for this great introduction and your invitation to this more than absolute needed event here. And I mean, just a statement from my side, space is great, space is infinite, and space business is absolute hype. All that is true. And yes, I am a space geek, without any doubt. In the next 45 minutes, plus the after party, we are raising questions today and will try to spark some thoughts with you. Under the motto of the panel, are we overdoing sustainability, which is a very simple question, and I think all of us would answer them with no, we have to do more. However, under this motto, we will spark some ideas. Well, let's talk a bit about the status of orbit debris, as mentioned before, launch as mega constellation on orbit servicing, and the attempt to remove debris. But if you ask yourself, is that all what is needed? So yesterday, Starlink launched the next batch of satellite, and it made it to a total of whatever, 1,200, if I count them correctly. There's, in my opinion, there's no time to wait anymore. So we have to act now. I'm Torsten Kriening, as Emmanuel said, your host today and publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. We are a Bern-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. And I just finished my weekly Space Cafe 33 minutes with this time Dr. Jessica West of PlugShare project about how the civil society participates in the space governance. So we drive that really forward. I know many of you are already familiar with our websites, the bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the weekly Space Cafe web talks and our Space Cafe podcast. And just as a spoiler, to mention it's the new episode 21 released of our podcast was released this morning and features Neve Shore. And it's a remarkable story to listen. I can tell you I'm very proud to have the chance to discuss today with a very distinguished panel of experts. And our experts help us to see the space sector also from the outside. I try to say that because we have to leave our ivory tower, our bubble of comfort as space industry. I encourage you to read the bios and the links of my guests, because I will not read them out here, and just jump into the talk here. And I'm happy to welcome on stage Professor Thomas Schildknecht, Roxy Güllmeister, and Markus Mooslechner. And I will say a few words about them when I'm calling them on stage. And I'm still see there's some discussion going on, but I hope you all are unmuted now. Thomas, Professor Dr. Thomas Schildknecht is the Deputy Director of the Astronomical Institute of the University in Bern. He is a leading expert on space debris, space safety, and space sustainability. Thomas, the first question to you: what are the biggest challenges for astronomers, astronomy, the astronomical community today, and how can they be solved? Over to you.
Thank you, Torsten. I guess you are asking me what are the biggest challenges for astronomers related to space debris or mega constellations. And I would say, first of all, mega constellations or the amount of objects we have out there is not primarily a challenge for astronomers, sorry, but it's a challenge for humankind. So let me explain that. The 60 plus satellites launched yesterday, fortunately, they're not as visible to naked eye as the previous ones used to be. So the biggest challenge as an astronomer I see is that we need to preserve the pristine night sky. You know, just imagine you're out there in wherever, in Australia, the outback, trying to enjoy the night sky, and you see hundreds of satellites at the same time in sky. You know, that's one of the scenarios which is absolutely feasible or which is likely. So I think it's foremost something for us all citizens. So there is easy or rather simple ways of mitigating that. And I mean, the company we are talking about, which launched yesterday a couple of satellites again, they did a good job in the sense that they just reoriented their satellites while moving them up there, so they're barely visible to naked eyes, and in their final orbit, they're not visible to naked eyes. Of course, astronomers, we have a big problem with all of that, but we also have to be aware that there are already 10,000 plus large objects there in low Earth orbit. So we already have to deal with that problem that we get these streaks, that we get a mess in our exposures using big telescopes. So we need to plan better our own observations. It's annoying, I fully agree, but there is another aspect to take into account for astronomers as well, is the fact that, you know, the spectrum, the radio spectrum, is going to be used more and more, and this is going to close our window for the deep universe. You know, when we're doing radio astronomy, that's another aspect of, you know, polluting our night sky. So once again, it's a big challenge for astronomers, but the biggest challenge, I think, is really to preserve the pristine night sky for all of us.
Wonderful. Thank you for this first statement. Next one on the panel, I'm happy to have her, and I hope you can unmute. That's wonderful. Roxy Güllmeister, she is an associate architect and a specialist in the modeling group at Foster+Partners in London. And they practice to work on the Moon Village concept and models for ESA. We all know these wonderful pictures, and I mean, I had the pleasure to see that in reality or in your studio. So what can we learn from other sectors, such as architecture? I mean, you have been there where we now are entering, and can space exploration and space construction be sustainable at all?
Thank you for the invitation, first of all, Torsten. Second, I want to start with a question. Let's start it the other way around. What is sustainability that we are all talking about? I think there's a very simple answer, and I want to quote an architect here. It's doing more with less. That is what Buckminster Fuller coined, and that's, I think, the key of the innovation that is needed, depending if it's on Earth or in space. But the challenge is essentially a similar one. So doing more with less means that should be our inner goal in whatever project we are doing, no matter on which planet, right? And architecture and space, in some ways, they relate quite well. They discover unknown, harsh territories where there is a lack of energy supply, or really, really hard and harsh and unlivingly conditions, right? And this is what we try to make inhabitable or usable. And that thought aligns us in looking at innovative technologies to get to our goal of doing more with less. So for example, for space, every gram is at a cost, at a really high cost, even more than on Earth. So we really try to think new. And what you can look at in terms of technology is how can you, for example, use small scale, redundant, collaborative machinery to essentially use resources that are out there. For example, what if you could print or you could make the material you find where you go printable, and you in a way only transport there the glue and the small scale printing machines that can collaboratively assemble whatever structure you need in place? Because then once you disappear, the amount of debris or outdated material you leave there is almost a compound of natural material, right? And we should look at self-assembly, but also at self-disassembly, to trying to close a loop that still we are working really hard to close on Earth. But I think you can take the chance to leapfrog that and not repeat mistakes that we have done in previous times here, and that we are paying a really high price altogether now in terms of really pushing the boundaries here. So I think there's amazing precedents on either side that we could, in close collaboration, really rethink what we are doing. Do we really need this heavy technology, or are there smarter, small scale, more redundant systems that would not bring emission to fail, but that would enable one to collaboratively pick up for the other? How can we entirely think new? And we have done this in architecture for quite some times, and now we are able to build skyscrapers from timber. Would you have expected that? I don't think so, right? So I think together we can go entirely new ways, because we are very close to material innovation, to everything from 3D printing of steel, of potential other soil materials, of complex geometries, of complex connections. So we can really achieve super strong structures with a fraction of the material we would have needed with conventional technologies. And this is then also informing that to be a viable approach, all the innovation is viable by only using a fraction of the resources you used before. So I think that's why collaboration here is a quintessential to help either side incorporate innovation from the other.
Absolutely, then thank you very much. And I think we will pick up on a few of these points or in a bit. Next on my panel is Markus Mooslechner. And Markus is an award-winning filmmaker and the executive, or one of the executive producers at the Terra Factual studios in Vienna. And also, to the full disclosure, he is the host of our Space Cafe podcast series, and I'm very proud that we could get him. So how can we communicate sustainability, which is by all means not a very sexy word, impactful? So can you help us? So how can we move from talking about that, what we are absolute great at, to actions?
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for the invitation to be on such a splendid panel. I'm starting to get seriously impatient with what we're discussing here, not on the panel, but in general, of course. I think what we need to do is, and what we have to do in the next step, is to put our cards on the table. It's just, there's no more time to just discuss another round of solutions. I think the solutions are all on the table. We need to get acting. We need to do it. And so I believe there's a couple of questions I would like to bring up and put on the table. My first question is, are we really trying hard enough? Like all of us, are we trying hard enough? I'm just just take, for example, ESA today announcing the new astronaut team for the next astronaut crew. So my question would be, are we trying hard enough if we say we're now also opening the doors to women and disabled people? I mean, like, would we even communicate this? Is this something that's something that needs to be communicated? I mean, like, that's self-evident, and we're way behind everything here. So the question is, can't we go way beyond this and invent and imagine a new form of space travel? So my question is, are we trying hard enough with anything we do, be it either in the industry or also when it comes to communication? I think we need to, as a filmmaker and a journalist, I think it's my job, it's our job to start exposing unwillingness as radically as possible, by exposing unwillingness to sustainable goals, to sustainable thinking. We need to bring those to the stage and bring those under the spotlight that are willing to imply sustainable goals and dedicate them towards achieving sustainability, and thereby producing or setting the spotlight on those companies and helping support their brands. So I think it's very important to radically put the focus on those who do something, and by exposing those who just don't do it by unwillingness or whatnot. And another point is we need to start making sustainability a business. We need to connect it to making money, because I think, in my very humble opinion, this is the only thing that drives humans. The question how and how fast we can make money. And as long as we are confronting ourselves with that kind of thinking and philosophy, I'm not taking any sides here, of course, but as long as we think in this way, I think we just have to make sustainability a business, which it is, and there's many solutions to that, and let people make money off it. And I think, again, we have all the solutions on the table, and we have been discussing all those topics for decades. So I would suggest that we stop using words as we need to create awareness. I'm bored to death out of those terminologies. We need to create awareness. We've been saying this and discussing that for decades now. I think we should also, each and every one of us, try harder. It's not the time to talk about awareness. It's time to act and employ our cognitive capabilities to come up with new ideas. Yeah, that's my energized part of that discussion.
Yeah, let's go back to the schmoozing session. No, not at all. And that's not what we are here for. So, and I promised you we want to make you think and get at least spark some thoughts. And I'm very happy to see a few interesting or a few names in the audience, at least on the page I can see here, that are familiar. And I just want to point out, we had last week a wonderful session run by Moriba Jah on space and religion. So where he gathered representatives from the majority of religions on one panel and talk with them about space. I mean, for me as an engineer, that was an breathtaking moment to get exposed to new thoughts. But Markus, I would like to take your question and just fire them back. So are we trying hard enough? Thomas?
Of course not. Of course we're not trying hard enough. In the sense that that Markus mentioned, I mean, there is voices out there which would call for immediately stopping any launches.
Yep, we wrote it last weekend.
Exactly. So would that be hard enough? Probably yes, but I don't think, as a space enthusiastic, I would like to see. Stopping all the launches. No, I think what means trying hard enough, we have to be aware that we have to not just to raise awareness, but we really have to work hard at all different levels. And when I mean all levels, that includes, commercial incentives or, the contrary, but that also means at a completely different level, which means at international level, we need to come up with completely new set of regulations at the international level. I mean, that has to be our goal. Even though we tried, for a decade now to come out with a set of guidelines, which are really good guidelines. But of course, they're not enough because they need to be implemented at national level and then finally, in the private sector. So I fully agree, we're not doing enough. But I also have to, we have to be aware that, we need to address the topic from all sides, not just, bottom up, top down, but from all sides.
Thank you, Thomas. Roxy, the same question to you. Are we trying hard enough or are we doing hard enough? You're muted. Can the tech team please unmute her, please? Because I see also a locker arm on that.
Well, you could write it on a piece of paper and hold it in the camera.
Yeah, that's hard. That's quite
We can
hard.
play it activity like
Hey,
I just draw it.
we
I'm an
can hear you.
architect, so I
We
can
can-
draw it.
We
What do you
can
want
hear
to
you.
say?
And please, tech team, don't mute her again, please.
Or
and
let
also
me
for
unmute myself.
Just a tech team details. Like you should not mute yourself because then each time we need to unmute you. So
Yes.
you don't mute
Okay,
yourself
thank
when
you.
you're done talking.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Emmanuel. So
So are we doing enough? Obviously not, because what we have been investigating in architecture is that we, as only for putting concrete infrastructure in place, we use almost a third of the global finite energy resources, right? And since we're using about, depending on the location in the developed world, between 3 to 7 planets or resources that are equivalent to 3 to 7 planets, no, we are not doing enough. And neither of us is, to be fair. And we have to work much harder and we have to think much more radical, I think. Radical in the sense of radical innovation, radical collaboration, and radically open sourcing ideas, making technologies and making our knowledge available. And I think this is key for all of us because, to be fair, we are in the same struggle for survival. So I can totally relate to Markus's passionate talk here. And even though we're in different branches of professions, we should be fighting for the same thing, and we should help each other. Because also I want to comment on the fact that yes, it needs to be a business case. For architecture, for example, one business case is that why is sustainable architecture worth doing it if something else might be slightly cheaper in the beginning? It's fairly simple. If you're a company and you have 1,000 people working for you and they're 30% more productive because they are in a healthy building with fresh air, stimulation, and not in a deprived office building where they can't control windows, sun shading, or other influences, more productive, more healthy, more happy people produce more money for companies. If you see it blunt like that, that even is already a business case for many cases. So I'm really excited. How will space be a business case, and how can space be a sustainable business case? Are there any ideas?
oh yes, I think so. There are ideas. And before asking you about some concrete examples from your end, I just want to say that there's the space sustainability rating out and or as a concept out, and that's primarily organized or supervised by the World Economics Forum. And next week, on the 23rd, I do have the chance to speak with Nikolai Christophe, or the head of space, or about that. And I want to dig into that to see where we stand. So, but can you, all of you, give us or the audience an example for potentially or real sustainability in space? And one question or one remark before, to the audience, if you send your question in, however that will work on this platform, I have no clue. Emmanuel will care about that, and that's also where we have then our after hour to sit with you or to talk with you or on your questions. So don't worry about that. They shouldn't be lost. So I hope that gave you also some time to think about your answers. So let's start with Markus now.
Sure. I think we need to, or at least as far as I'm concerned, I try to think sustainability in the broadest possible sense. And sustainability, in my opinion, is not just limited to being or to the ecological aspect of the word. Sustainability is everything that goes together with thinking about tomorrow, that we have a sustainable life in every form, also tomorrow. So when it comes to space travel, how can it be sustainable? I think we also need to take into account the sustainability, for example, of training when it comes to, I just brought up the example, astronauts. Is it a sustainable model to train for many, many years, to have someone ready in 10 years? Is this an efficient model? Perhaps that goes beyond my abilities as not being an expert in the space industry, but it's just a question I'm raising. Are we here also sustainable in the training process? So what I would just like to, I would like to use that as a symbol to widen our horizon when it comes to the terminology sustainability, because again, I'm repeating myself, sustainability goes way beyond ecological aspects and employs a lot more the thinking about a healthy tomorrow in all its forms.
I think your question is absolutely great, and I encourage you to raise this point, because that's why we have you as non-space geeks, but I mean you are space experts as well. Here on this table, because we have to learn that we as space community has to go beyond our comfort zone, leave our bubble or leave the cradle. I mean, to take the nice word by Tolstoy. Thomas, your point or your remarks on what are we doing sustainable, or are there examples for sustainable space travel or space activities, not travel?
Hard question. Because you know, where are we acting sustainable or applying best practices? I could show you, I could give a few examples where we do it, in the right direction. I don't want to say we do it already as we should. I mean, one example is in the geostationary region. As you know, this is the part where we had, until recently, most of the commercial actors. And this region is a very narrow zone in space, which is absolutely valuable. We cannot replace that region by any other region. And for many years, operators just left their assets up there by the end of the life. And we were urging them for decades to at least remove these objects into what we call a graveyard orbit, which is not, it's not the best thing to do, but it's better than leaving your car on the, on the motorway when it's dead. So move it away of that motorway. And the good example is that, from year to year, we see a much better adherence to that policy to remove objects out there. And for the past year, apart from cases where you have lost your object, all the other objects were really removed. And this is something which is at the cost for the operators. I mean, just imagine what a month of operation with you know, a high-power telecommunication satellite is going to give you in terms of profit. So you have to decide to spend money or lose money by removing your asset. But apparently, you know, the operators have seen that this is in their own benefit because they want to place their next satellite up there. This is just one example. There's other ones. I mean, there were missions where the upper stages were lowered to deploy satellites which don't need a high altitude, and finally the upper stages were deorbited. So it's doable, and it has been shown.
Okay, so I mean, I would like to ask a further question on the deployment of satellites into the graveyard orbit. I mean, you mentioned earlier the long-term sustainability guidelines and their adaptation last year, no, 2 years back now at Copius, but we are far away from implementing them. So they are guidelines. So is that enough to put especially a geo satellite into a higher geo orbit, or are they coming back sooner or later?
It's, of course, it's not enough. I mean, and we have shown that. I mean, we have shown that these objects are not just colliding with each other, but they're aging and they're shedding parts, you know. I mean, solar cells which come off, multi-layer insulation which comes off. And I mean, we have been observing them and discovering them more than 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, let's say. So it's definitely not enough. I mean, it's just, yeah, one solution. It's like in former times where we, you know, you left your garbage on the street. So the next thing was, oh, let's dispose it somewhere. Not nice, but at least you have moved it away. Finally, of course, we should not leave it there at all. But this is, you know, if you want to remove really an object from geo by putting it either into heliocentric orbit or to bring it back to Earth, I mean, that's a whole lot of energy. And we are not talking about a few percent of the mission costs. We are talking about, you know, a good percentage, a third of the mission cost, half of the mission cost, which is not the case in LEO. I mean, there you can, for a few percent of the mission cost, you could do a much better job.
Okay. Don't want to go into further details because that could be an entire program on its own. But
absolutely.
Roxy, you mentioned before architects have shown how we can deal with sustainability. But do you have for us an example, maybe from the past when you worked on the concept for the Moon Village, about sustainability in space? I mean, you mentioned the materials on the moon and using the regolith and all of that, but is there something concrete? Because I mean, I'm monitoring a few of the questions that coming are from our audience. A few mentioned what you're talking about is not even developed on Earth. So how the heck are we doing it on space if we can't manage it here on Earth? What I think is a valid point.
What is it that we can't manage on Earth?
Sustainability, the use of resources.
Well, that yes, but certain aspects of the technologies are sort of ready to use, right? We're just not widely applying them yet, and that's I think that's one key. All the pieces that are needed to do sustainable buildings, not only if you're asked to, but to make it mandatory to do it, all the necessary information, knowledge, and technology is there. So that is exactly the difficulty, is how do we force application, or how do we encourage application, or make it such a convincing case that nobody would do anything else anyways, right? But it's the exact same point with cars and fossil fuel, right? Why are we still buying them, and why are they still available? I think this is parts of it is that also society, unfortunately, has some sort of responsibility to demand and to to push. Nothing ever came from someone who is, if you have a good business and you earn money with it, you have no incentive to change unless you either can make better business or have better, cheaper resources available, or you're somehow encouraged or enforced to do so. And this is I think where sort of the Bermuda Triangle is laying with this. We can do it. We have it. We can do amazing things, and we do them in spots, but we have not managed to roll them out. I mean, since Paris Agreement, we have a lot of certified buildings, and buildings are getting more and more certified because the business cases then they can be rented at higher rents when they are certified green buildings, for example. So we see all this coming up, but it's slowly building up. And this is where I see for space that you are in a similar range of problems, right? How do we enforce sustainability?
Okay, thank you. As we slowly but steady are moving to an end, here of our wonderful panel, and I hope we could spark some ideas. So I would like to address a few of the for me burning topics, and just want to have your view on that. I mean, broadband from Starlink, broadband everywhere. Where is the dominance of one actor in space? Is that okay or not, or how you see that in a few words? Doing the other way now, Roxy. Two space geeky question.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the question is not about broadband or not. I mean, that's something we have to decide in terms of sustainability, as Markus mentioned. You know, I mean, we have to decide, hey, do we want that broadband? Is that something we need as a society? Is that something we will be happy about? And then if we need it, what does it mean in terms of ecology in space, and how do we balance all that? But the point is more about the one. And the problem is not the one. The problem is that one party could occupy, you know, get its hand on a whole region of space, which, you know, he's going to fully fill up. So the sustainability index will be at 100% for that region. So can we live with the first come, first serve thing? You know, no, I mean, if you look at the Outer Space Treaty, clearly not. I mean, every country, they're talking about countries, of course, but everybody should be able to use space with no not discriminating any country. And we have examples where we have regulations, you know, frequency regulations. I mean, everybody going up to GEO will get finally a spot because that's a limited resources. It's not first come, first served, and that's all. You cannot just fill up the whole GEO. So we have found a way to at least moderately regulate this in the geo region at the international level. And we are missing that completely right now with this new business with the mega constellations in LEO. I mean, if we will have one of them fully deployed, that region in space will be used, and in worst case, it will be polluted for decades to come.
I mean, as you alluded to the radio frequency management, I think there are regulations in place, and I'm seeing Alexandra from the ITU are in the audience, and I mean, they have set these standards, and it seems to work, or at least everybody accepting that at the moment. Markus, but over to you. The broadband from broadband everywhere versus the impact that it has in space. Is it worth the price?
Well, it's a good question to ask. I would love to see the impact it has in space as opposed to the impact it has on Earth when it comes to the telecoms. So I'm hesitant to take sides here, because I don't know if what the telecoms do with their cell towers everywhere, is that a different impact to what we're seeing in space now? So I think the jury is out as far as I'm concerned. In order, as this, I guess, is the last round of answers and questions, I would like to share something positive from my world, to from my side leave you guys with a positive aspect that shows us very clearly that no matter where you come from or who you are, you can change the world. And I would like to share this example with you guys. So Terra Factual Studios, that's the production house, the film production house I'm with. We produced a film about the illegal ivory trade, especially in Africa. Africa with China and blah, blah, blah. So, and this film produced a massive impact on the illegal ivory trade, and produced a ban of illegal ivory trade in China. So that means something. We are a small production house based out of Vienna, Austria, which is on a global scale nowhere, but still we could make a difference, and we could achieve the impossible, that ivory trade was banned in China. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if we are trying hard enough, and we tried really hard enough, people, my colleagues, were risking their lives literally for that production. So no need to do that perhaps for our little discussion here, to risk our lives for space sustainability. But if we want to go a little bit in that direction, I think if we try harder, each and every one of us, I think it is possible to bring about change, in my opinion.
So my takeaway is, let's make Markus a film about the topics we are talking about, and we have the global audience, and we can say,
sure,
we can make something out of it. I take you
sure,
on that.
Just tell me the pain points. You all out there, send me an email and tell me where the pain points are.
Okay. As we have to come now for the official part to an end, I would really like to come back to the topic of the title, Are We Overdoing Sustainability? And give you a last chance for some nice words and thoughts about it, and what is your call to our audience. And we have still 150 people in the audience, what is great. So, and I hope you all will listen to us. Get your voice out on this question, or even not on this question. Thomas, would you like to start?
Yeah, the question is, I mean, the simple answer is, of course, we are not overdoing sustainability. And if you know, I'm often asked, hey, but if we need to implement all these regulations, and if we need to be the nice guys, I mean, we'll be so much in problem with our economy in Europe, for example. So Europe will lag behind because others don't have that. I mean, it's exactly the same discussion as with the climate change. And we have exactly the same resistance as with the climate change. And so my answer is usually, if we go for that green propellant, for example, which Isa was talking about, if we go for sustainable use, that in contrary going to create a whole range of new opportunities. And I mean, clear space is one example. I don't want to say, you know, removing one object from space is going to save the world, not at all. But I mean, just, you know, showing that you can perhaps even make a business out of it. I think we're not overdoing. We are in contrary. If we are not reacting right now, we are going to lose that battle.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you very much. And I mean, we didn't touch on the solidarity during the COVID crisis in Europe so far. So I think that's something before the after party. Roxy, are we overdoing sustainability? And if not, how can we improve that?
So as I said before, we're still using more resources than our planet can sustainably and regeneratively provide us with. So we are not overdoing it. We are not even kind of there in any way. What I wanted to suggest is that even on buildings, on cars, and everything now, do the hardcore math. What is the footprint? What is the impact of each solution? Put it on the table. Start tying facts to this whole discussion. We're discussing all the time, but we still have hard times getting the expertise together to put numbers against each solution, because I think this is then informing taking decisions. I think we have to really set our skills out and set science out to take decisions based on the hard facts. What's the footprint? What's the impact? And the satellite example is a brilliant example for that, and it works for concrete, for satellites, for all types of matter. So I think beyond borders, we should consider that we only have this one planet with all those resources available, and we should not overuse it. So until we're one-to-one and that shift is balanced, we are having a hard time in front of us to solve that.
Thank you. Markus, I think that was water on your mills, or some last words from your end here for the for before we going to the after party, taking off the tie and doing all the other cool stuff. What you do on after parties?
Party. Well, yeah. So, are we overdoing sustainability? Was the question, I guess. I would answer no. We're doing it half-heartedly, and I would even go further and say we have not even started to be sustainable in the space industry, to put it that way, to put it mildly, I guess. And my question would be, if there's a billionaire in the room right now, an XPrize could incentivize and launch an industry potentially. I mean, like the Google guys have tried to bring about a bunch of those prizes. Some worked out, some didn't. But it could be an incentive to bring about a change, perhaps in a certain field of this industry, green space or whatever you might call it. So why not think in those directions? Or if we get together, I mean, like the GameStop story from the past couple of weeks that produced a little bit of upheaval on the stock market, produced a beautiful example of what happens when a bunch of people in the thousands get together and take on the big ones. So I think it could be, there's a bunch of ways to incentivize change in the space industry. And of course, also, and that's my last point, I believe it's very simple. We're begging the policymakers, we're begging you guys to impose stronger regulations on us. I think it's as easy as that.
Okay, thank you very much. And that was not a call for space revolt, just to mention that and be clear on that. So,
but the call for collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
that's last sentence. If you feel like anything input exchange is helpful, just radically reach out to everyone here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much for this official part and this panel. It was, for me, it was awesome to get some ideas exchange with you and get your input. So with that, handing back to Emmanuel.
Thank you, Torsten.
Yeah, thank you so much, Torsten, and thank you for all the panelists. As you heard, and they mentioned that there's going to be an after party. Indeed, this is a surprise. People who want to stay, you can stay online, and we'll continue the discussion of the record. So no recording, so people can really exchange and say what they want. It's going to be I would say, closed session, like when you're in the bar and you're talking to other people. So we'll try to recreate the atmosphere, and I really trust Torsten to be able to give you this nice feeling. So to conclude for that day, for the people who needs to go back also to their lives, I'd like to thank you very much for attending this day, where we had some amazing keynote speakers. really introducing the emergency of space sustainability, also bringing some solutions for more sustainable space logistics. In terms of housekeeping rules, again, videos will be available on the platform. So if you are not able to, if you arrived late, you can still look again at those videos. If you want to re-see also, that's a good place. And then they will be on YouTube. So if you think they were really amazing, then you can post it on your social media. Tomorrow it's going to be also an amazing day. We'll start again at 4 p.m. European time. The first talk is going to be a keynote speaker from Olivier Devecq, Professor Devecq from MIT, on the space logistic enabler of the final frontier. Then we'll have also another keynote speak from DHL on logistics transformation from a cost category to a strategic lever on Earth and in space by Klaus Dorman. I'm really excited to see what has DHL to say to us space geeks. And we'll complete that day with a really cool panel discussion moderated by Maxime Puteaux from Euroconsult on the topic New Space, Enabling Agile Space Logistics, with speakers from The Orbit, Orbit5, Ariane Group, and Astroscale. So stay tuned, and I really hope to see you tomorrow connected again.